Hello, everyone. Thanks for watching if you are. And we are back again for another conversation. This week, what we're going to be looking at is we're going to be talking about what we do when we go into corporate. So when we go into offices, when we go and run workshops with the staff there. And we're going to talk about maybe our favorite parts, the parts that we think that the clients find the most useful and the biggest takeaways that we see. So I'm joined with Andrew. Thank you, Andrew, for joining me and me joining you. How are you today?
Yeah. Thanks, Anita. I'm really good. Yourself?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. So I thought we would
Awesome.
kick off with what sort of things we do, what sort of exercises we run, maybe to talk through some of those. And this is obviously your specialist subject. I know one of your favorite things to do. So talk us through some of the exercises that we run when we go in.
Yeah. Fabulous. I guess let's start with, I love these kind of, corporate engagements or business engagements because we get to work with more than one human, which is always fascinating because it brings in that, interpersonal space, the relational dynamics. And, I think a nice place to start, we should probably talk about communications and relating because it's the glue for everything in an organization. And I know that's a topic that's pretty dear to your heart. But what I'd love to actually start with is just a little frame on corporates and business work that we do. Normally it's in, I would say, a couple of parts. It's usually because, a CEO or a business owner wants a different result from the business. And they're usually perceiving that there's some sort of cultural or team performance problem in getting. And so we get called in because there's a problem that hasn't been able to be solved internally by the executive team or the business owner. And we come in with some sort of business problem to solve or some sort of cultural uplift to do. And what's really interesting about that dynamic for me is that change is hard. And I think there's a stat from out of the US, some research that said that even people that are diagnosed with, post a heart attack, only 7% of them actually make any substantial lifestyle change. So I kind of called in with a change mandate. And then, in interacting with the humans, we've got to overcome this natural inbuilt human tendency to stay the same. And so I thought it'd be interesting to open up with a little bit of that dynamic.
Yeah, for sure. And I think one of the key things I've definitely noticed is, when we first started to go in, we were probably going in more because there was a business problem, a
Mm,
process problem. And
mm,
what would happen is we were kind of called in on that basis, but very quickly it would start to
yeah,
unfold that it was a communication, human behavior piece, as well
yeah,
as, the process piece. And I think, a lot of what we've done is evolved into, the recognition of the human behavior part a lot earlier on,
yeah,
because I have many conversations with people. I had one this morning where it's the business. We talk about the business, but whilst we're
mm,
talking about the business, we're not talking about the people, and the business isn't the business without the people at this point in time.
right,
So one of the
right,
the really key elements is as well as looking at the processes, it's how is the processes, the current process even, do they even need updating? Sometimes, maybe, whatever. But do the communication channels, the human behavior part, does that need updating more than anything? So
yeah,
huge one.
100%.
Mm.
One of the things for me, and this is the beauty of working together in a sense as well on this sort of stuff, I traditionally had more of a bent to trying to solve the business problem at the business level. And you were probably more on the human behavior side. And, I learned a fair bit about that from you. We had some interesting conversations about that dynamic. And just to share that with people, ultimately it's the people that create the systems and the processes. And it doesn't even matter whether it's automation or AI or anything like that, it's still humans creating it. And, to sort of add to that, what we really want when we go in is we want to help people self-author themselves or empower themselves. And so we teach them, how to think, how to feel, how to problem solve, how to communicate, how to behave, how to, create a vision for themselves. how to interact with other people. And then that takes care of the systems and the processes side of things and the goals and the things that most traditional, business coaches would talk about, or business experts would talk about. So yeah, I love that you've introduced that nuance early.
Yeah. And one of the key things to share with people is what we get a lot of the clients to do as well, is we'll get them to do a personality typology testing. We'll get them to do various tests as well, because a really key part of it is really to see, as we sit with them, it's like, as we're talking through certain things, problems or whatever, we're also observing how people are interacting with each other. And it's really key for us to obviously share that with people, but also for people to be able to go away and do their own personality type testing so that they can see for themselves some blind spots for them, maybe in their own personality, not realizing that this is the way that I necessarily do things. And then to be able to see, different members of their team operating at a different personality or a same personality to them. So there's often, we sit there and we go, oh yeah, I get on with them, but I can't get on with them. I can't stand them, or, I find them really difficult to work with. So this is the really key part that can, inhibit some of the processes that might be actually working okay. It's the personality clashes that come into it. So a big part of the work is to understand firstly ourselves, how we operate, and then to see how different members of our team operate, and actually how we've kind of maybe been brought together in our differences as well as our sameness in order to make a complete team to be able to deliver the work that's needed.
Yeah, 100%. I think you alluded in the first couple of sentences that, maybe there's an opportunity for us to share, obviously, confidentially, some of the stuff we do in our corporate sessions. And, maybe we should just dive into a couple of examples of some of the exercises we've run and insights that, have been generated in the team as a result of it. Is there any that come to mind for you that you'd like to start with, or would you like me
Yeah,
to?
I mean, I've definitely got a couple on the personal side. I don't know whether, do you want me to start?
Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
Yeah. So what can happen is we don't necessarily have a set agenda. So we'll go in with what we think we're going to do, but as the days evolve, we might bring in some exercises. And one that can come in is one where we pair people off, or we get the teams to pair themselves off.
Yeah.
And what we encourage is for, two people to find each other that maybe don't spend as much time together, that maybe, maybe don't get on that well. And what we do is we get them to stand in a pair, sit in a pair, and we get one of them to talk for 2 minutes and the other one to simply listen. And so what we're doing in that, in that exercise is we're really getting them to open up. And it's not necessarily it can be on, we might set something, but it can be on anything at all. Just tell them something about yourselves that that they may not know about you, or, to talk about yourself for 2 minutes. And then the other person, starts to talk for 2 minutes, and the other person then listens for the 2 minutes. And then we'll take them through some further exercises where they start to then match each other's body language. So one talks and the other one matches the other person's body language. Then we'll do another exercise where they will then start to mismatch each other's body language. So one will be talking and doing something, and we'll encourage the other one to maybe walk off as the person's talking. And this is really all in aid of bringing to our awareness how good we are at listening, how good we are at maybe making judgments about people that we haven't got to know on a bit more of a deeper level, how to build rapport. So when we match people's body language, as long as we're not doing it too obviously or distractingly, we're in a sense building rapport. When we're mismatching, when we're not listening, where we're walking off when someone's speaking, then obviously we're probably going to be breaking rapport. And it's really to help people to draw attention to what they may do, on a day-to-day. And as they go away from these exercises, they've now anchored in this kind of awareness, so that when they go into their next conversations with people, they start to become aware. Am I matching? Am I mismatching? Am I listening? Am I judging? Am I talking to myself as that person's talking? And we hear some really, some really beautiful things from those exercises. And it's like, a couple of minutes of listening to someone, how much difference that can make for someone saying they felt heard, or they felt awkward talking about themselves for 2 minutes, or they've really learned something about that person that they thought that they were so different from. So those kind of exercises are, often my favorite, and ones that can be quite moving.
Yeah, totally. I'd love to extend that theme before we
Yeah.
share another exercise that we do, just to give it a little more flavour because, people know obviously communication is so important and, a lot of people do communications work. And, you know, I recall when we went into a big financial institution, perhaps, maybe a year ago, 18 months ago now, one of the parts of the exercise that was really fun, which is a bit of an extension on what you were just talking about. We'd already done the rapport building, the mismatching, et cetera, and, the nonverbal cues. But then we're actually taking people through the 4 levels of listening. And just to really quickly share what the 4 levels of listening are, because when we ask people, what's a good listener look like? What do you know about good listening? They'll usually say something like active listening. And for a lot of people, that actually means thinking while they're listening or talking back while they're listening. And it's kind of the opposite of good listening. And so, there's 4 levels of listening. There's download listening, where you're listening from, your normal listening habits. There's empathic listening, which is genuinely listening for the other person's perspective. There's factual listening, where you're really listening for the truth of the conversation or the objectivity of the conversation. And then there's sacred listening, which is just pure silence. And a lot of people haven't been exposed to these different levels of listening. And, what you were sharing just in terms of some of the profoundness of people actually feeling like they've been heard for the first time. And, we have a lot of people cry in our sessions and have some pretty interesting emotions that come up as a result of feeling as though they've genuinely been heard. So it's pretty deep, can be pretty deep stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I remember there was another one that we did where, and this was completely, kind of just what was required in the moment, what was necessary in the moment. There was a bit of conflict that had arisen, and I think this is the thing. This is, some people can listen to this, and this was maybe why, you know, some companies wouldn't go in and do this kind of work because it can be quite confronting, some of this stuff. And there's been times where people have gone, we don't want to go there because we don't want to end up arguing with people. But what we found, every time we've gone in is that it does get a little bit uncomfortable, and in theory it should, because people are now starting to speak up and to say things that they may never have said before. So what we try to do is we obviously set the scene and we create a space where we set permissions that everyone is okay to share and everyone's okay for everyone else to share. And obviously, whether they like what they hear, eventually we get to a place of understanding. So this is a
It's
really
like,
critical part.
okay, but
Yeah, depends what you're going to say. Yeah. Um, but and it does. It gets uncomfortable, and it should be uncomfortable. But because we are sat there and we've dedicated that time, however many days it is over, we will get to a point of understanding. And I think that's
yeah,
really, really key and important. With anything in life and in the world, we spend so much time in our minds, mind reading them and what they're doing and what they're not doing at work, and how they might be lazy, or they're not listening to me, or they're not doing what they should be doing. And the beauty of actually bringing people together and taking the time to listen to each other and to understand what's happening, it's kind of inevitable that we don't reach, in this type of work that we do, some sort of, mutual understanding and, a better way of working. So I think that's really key. It's like, how much time are we actually spending in any of our relationships actually picking apart what's happening, rather than maybe avoiding it or going straight into the
right.
confrontation without allowing the resolution, let's say, the deeper
Yeah.
stuff to come through.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
It's definitely a feature of, what we do, just being able to facilitate much more radically honest conversations in a safe space.
Yeah.
I remember a recent one, where in the first 15 minutes, we were really knee deep in it, 15 minutes in, and I thought, Struth, this is going to be an entertaining day. But what was amazing about that is it only took one person to go first. And then all of a sudden it became okay for everyone else to do the same.
Yeah.
And we had a day and a half, and, it was quite mind blowing how open and honest everyone became. And, a lot of these corporate exercises, sometimes people will spend a lot of time on values and, different things like that. And, we kind of go a bit of the short circuit on that stuff. I remember asking the team in this particular workshop to just write up what's important to them on the board. And we wrote it up on the board and we created a list and we looked at what was most important across the whole team. And, it was really about, psychological safety, trust, honesty, integrity, all of these things that they felt were perhaps not there at the level that they desired them. And we did this exercise. I remember going out onto the lawn in the Hunter Valley and, I invited someone to step forth and give me love. And it was a complete circuit breaker. And the whole group was sort of questioning, well, okay, how does that work? Because that's not something we do every day at work. And how do I give love? How do I receive love? And you can replace the word love with any of the values that anyone will ever say, whether it's honesty, integrity, trust, care, etc., etc. And it just highlights that, we miss each other in relationships so much because we're not communicating at the level that we can understand each other. And the exercise was really profound because it showed people about communication and the way we make meaning, and ultimately also that the best thing you can do as a human being is to give it to yourself so that you can share it with the team. And so, that's another example of an exercise that we do quite often. What else comes to mind for you?
I think there was one where this was again very in the moment where there was some conflict arising, and we opened up a space where before we went into the stuff that seemed like it was going to be conflicting, we went round the room and each individual said what they loved, in theory, what they liked, what they appreciated in each of their team members. So we went round and we did that, and that brought up, quite a lot of stuff for people as well. And then that allowed more of an opening then for, we set some frames around, whatever's coming next isn't because this isn't personal. This is about what's needed to change within the processes. Right. So I think that's a really key part. Once we can kind of soften that whole human behavior part, then we can really get into what's not working with the process to be more objective to the process rather than it being you're not doing this in the process. And I think that's really key and a way that's really handy to do it, to get into the personal stuff, get that kind of on board, get everyone, at a place where they're feeling more comfortable with each other to then be able to become more objective to what the process is, what's not working in the process that needs to change. So,
that was a big one. I remember that really well.
Yeah.
What about I remember
a business process perspective then? What are some of the exercises that you like to especially do that you find the most effective?
Yeah, there's so many. But one that I'll share just really quickly is, when people talk about like creating a vision, they often think it's going to be like 2 days and, who knows whether we'll get something out and, what's it going to look like and da-da-da-da-da. And, as you've sort of shared, we like to get into the deep stuff pretty quick. So the way that one of the ways we get to a vision really quickly is in a group. We ran this exercise up in the Hunter Valley where we asked everyone in the team to individually design the front page of a newspaper. And, we were just trying to understand from each individual what their vision was for the organisation that they were a part of. And, it was a really simple exercise because we give, 15, 20 minutes for them to mock up, a headline, a sub-headline, a funny image, and a couple of lines of text. And it's not so much about the drawing or the result per se. It's more about the thinking and the motivations and the drives of each individual and what they can see being brought to the table and then shared with everyone else. And it's a really neat way to bring about that shared human vision because it kind of honors that every single human being in the organization will always have their own vision, values, motivations, morals, etc., etc. And I think I said this, last time, we try and we don't, but society, in a sense, tries to go for conformity. And what we try and do is trying to bring out the power of individual contribution, and then align it in the most functional way. So I really like that exercise, and then that provides a lot of fuel for, each person will share why they wrote the headline that they wrote, and then that talks to their human behavior, and then that gives us a way to help develop, okay, how does our culture sit behind that? How does our individual behavior sit behind that? How do we communicate and relate with each other in the context of that? So I really love that one. That's a pretty cool one.
Yeah, it's a good one. Quite fun as well. I always
Yeah.
have a bit of a laugh at drawings and
There's another drawing one, actually. There's another drawing one where sometimes we talked, on our last session about, the 120 programs and how people think and how that comes out in their behavior and their actions and communications. And one exercise that we do with people is we invite them to draw their ideal office plan. And again, it's like a 10-minute exercise. But people's thinking comes out onto the page. And so you'll see some people, and they'll have a completely open plan office, with bean bags and all sorts of fun things, not much structure. Some people might draw the beach with a computer, a little laptop, sort of the digital nomad sort of thing. Other people might draw, a lot of quiet spaces. Some people might draw a really structured, closed desk kind of environment. And it really speaks to the way that they prefer their environment to be for their highest performance at work. And it speaks to the way they think about themselves. So powerful. Do you want to say something about that one?
well, it's a bit like someone could draw the picture, you could put it in front of, of us, and it's like you could personality type the person based on how
Yeah.
they would, how they want to work. So it's,
100%.
the thinking is the personality, right? So it's, always the introvert might be on their own somewhere, or
Right.
the extrovert's got lots around them, lots of people, lots of things. And
Right.
you can tell a lot by these exercises. So always good.
Yeah.
Interesting to see. So yeah. So
100%.
what would you, I think for me, I was just reflecting on some of the takeaways that people might take away, companies might take away.
Right.
And I think one for me that always stands out is, as well as all of the stuff, obviously the process stuff that they take away. But in terms of the communication part, it's always great to hear, especially when we follow up with them and hear that they're still doing it, is maybe using some sort of code language even to know when a conversation isn't going in the most healthy way. And it's kind of like a timeout word that people will use in meetings, for example, to kind of just, let's see what's happening for everyone. Let's take a time out, see what's going on for everyone, rather than the old habits of just carrying on arguing and then maybe leaving the meeting and being annoyed with each other. And just really, because as we always say with any of this stuff, it's not what you learn it's what you learn in the sessions, but the most important part of this work is what you take away and what you implement. And if we're not implementing it, then the change piece is obviously, won't happen just from having a few hours with us. So loving those kind of timeout words where people get to reflect on stuff and maybe have a different conversation to, any conversation they've had before in the workplace. So that's
one of the things that just comes up for me as you talk about that, and the group that I was mentioning before from the Hunter Valley, I mean, we've been fortunate to visit the Hunter Valley together on multiple occasions. They're always great trips and great people that we're helping. And when we did this exercise around, the values and, what was coming out was very much psychological safety oriented and, basic trust, really basic needs working together. And, sometimes people find that hard to link to the results of a business. It's actually relatively simple. I mean, you produce product that gets revenue, and on the way you incur costs in doing that. And the more friction there is in a team and the more disconnection there is in the communication and the way we relate together, the slower the product's going to be produced and the more inefficient the product's going to be produced, more cost you've got and the less revenue that you're going to get from your sales. So it's a pretty simple equation. And, what I really loved about that particular example was that, we basically gave the team, almost like a sliding door moment. And, we invited them to consider whether they wanted to be a victim of their own negativity, or whether they wanted to empower themselves and decide as a team that in spite of the challenges, we're going to trust ourselves and we're going to trust each other. And we're going to have integrity with ourselves and we're going to have integrity with each other. And we're going to be honest with each other, et cetera, et cetera. And, what I was just really amazed with in that particular one was there was a 360-degree shift, on day one. And, we kept in contact with that team for, probably 90 days afterwards. And they were still working to the charter that they developed in the 1.5 days that we spent with them, which I think is it's a testament to that team. And it was just beautiful to be part of.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Well,
All right, then. I think that's us done for this week. Good topic, good chat. Good to see you. And
well, I
thanks
think
for
also,
watching. Yeah.
just before we close, if anyone's listening that's running a business or part of an executive team on a business and you just want to explore what might be possible, then feel free to DM either, myself or Anita, and, we're more than happy just to explore what's going on inside your business. We know at the moment that a lot of businesses are really struggling to find and hold on to really good people, and prices are generally up and revenues generally static or down. And so it's a tough environment. So if you just want to have a confidential, no obligation exploration, and just DM Anita or myself, and we'd be happy to jump on a call with you. So, and yeah, thank you, Anita, for leading us tonight. Appreciate you.
All right, then. Look forward to hearing from you. Thanks for watching. See you next week.